Hello Internet, I'm Mo, and this is my first wrap-up video. So I did plan on posting this like a week ago, but I have a very good reason for being late, which is that I got sick right at the beginning of the month and lost my voice, and since I couldn't talk, I couldn't make a video. I suppose I probably could have just like mouthed the words of the camera and captioned the whole thing, but I'm way too lazy for that. So I read 9 books in the month of August, which is pretty good for me. I don't normally read that much, but I spent a lot of time on airplanes and was able to spend that time well by reading. So I read some more books than normal, which is great. I also feel like I had a pretty good reading month so far as variety, a lot of different genres. So yeah, let's get into it. In no particular order, the first book I read this month was Enchantment by Orson Scott Card. Most people know him for the Ender's Game series and his other sci-fi stuff. This was actually a standalone fantasy novel, and it's a retelling of Sleeping Beauty from the prince's point of view, and it's set in like modern Russia and America, and there's time travel. So it was pretty awesome. Yeah, the culture clash was just done really super well, and the characters were really fleshed out and really true to life feeling, and yeah, if you like fairy tale retellings, I definitely recommend this one. The next books that I read this month were the first 3 books of the Glamorous Histories series by Mary Robinette Kowal, and these are a historical fantasy series set in the Regency. So the first one is Shades of Milk and Honey, the second one is Glamour and Glass, and the third one is The Year Without a Summer. And each of them is slightly different, almost genre-wise, which I thought was pretty cool. So the first one is a very Jane Austen-esque sort of plot and setting and whatnot, except that there's magic. So in these books, there's this thing called glamour, which is a magic that's illusion-based, but it doesn't have a lot of practical uses because of some limitations, and so it's mostly used for making art. So because this is a Jane Austen-like setting, glamour is one of the things that young ladies are expected to do, kind of like they're expected to play the pianoforte. The second book takes the main characters to France during the Napoleonic Wars, and it's a little more action-y and still kind of talking about how that magic type affects different things. And that was really interesting. And then the third book is sort of like a conspiracy novel set in the Regency, so there's all this sort of intrigue and you don't know who's doing what or why they're doing the things that you see them doing and what it all means, and the main character is trying to piece all of it together. I did really enjoy these books. I think I gave each of them 3 stars. These are the first novels that Mary Kowal has written. She's done more short stories in the past, I think. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading more of her stuff in the future and seeing how her writing progresses. But although these weren't the best written novels I've ever read, they were a lot of fun, and I'm definitely planning on continuing with the series. Apparently the next one is a heist novel set in Venice with Lord Byron, and that sounds pretty cool. The next book that I read was A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr., and this is a sci-fi novel, and it's in 3 parts. It's set in a post-apocalyptic dystopian, and then this medieval Renaissance-esque time period, and then a high-tech science fiction at the end, and it follows an order of monks who were formed during that post-apocalyptic time to smuggle and copy books so that they can preserve the knowledge of the former age, which is our time. And I loved this book. I talked a little bit more about it on my previous video, but definitely 5 stars, all the stars, guys. This book is just amazing. It's the best book I've read all year, definitely. And if you like science fiction and you have not read this book, definitely go pick it up. The next book that I read this month was The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents by Terry Pratchett, and this is a Discworld novel. It's also a children's novel. Any of you who have not read any Discworld previously, it looks really intimidating because there's so many books, but you do not have to read them in order. Really, you can read any Terry Pratchett book as a standalone, and if you like talking animal books, this would be a great place to start. So if you don't know, Terry Pratchett wrote Comic Fantasy, and this book is actually a retelling of the Pied Piper story, in which the main characters are a talking cat who's kind of a con artist and a bunch of talking rats. And it's really fun. I really enjoyed all of the characters, and it was actually a lot deeper than I was expecting, because these animals had actually recently become intelligent and gained the ability to speak and read and do all of these things, and so they were starting to ask all these like difficult questions, like why can we talk now and how should we organize our society and stuff like that. So if that sounds at all interesting to you, it's a lot of fun, pretty quick read. I would definitely go pick it up. The next book that I read in August was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. And I had been meaning to read this for a really long time because I love fantasy and I love children's books and I like classics. So I thought, this is all of those together and it should be good. I think maybe it had been kind of overhyped for me, possibly also because I know a little bit of Lewis Carroll's poetry and I really enjoy his poetry. But the prose in this was just kind of meh, and since I already knew the story, there was nothing really there to surprise me and help me enjoy it. And I really didn't like Alice, like at all. So this is like 2 stars for me, guys. Sorry if any of you love it. The next book that I read in August was a collection of short stories by Rudyard Kipling called The Phantom Rickshaw and Other Ghost Stories. Once I had finished reading this book, I realized that they weren't actually all ghost stories, so I'm not sure why they titled it that. The first half of it was, the last 2 stories in it were not. And I'm not sure if it's just because I'm not really big on ghost stories, but those last 2 were my favorites. They just drew me in a lot more than the stories in the beginning half of the book. Because this is Rudyard Kipling, most of them are set in India, which was interesting. To see that cultural aspect of them. I thought the first half of the book was okay, I liked the second half better. Overall, I think 3 stars for that book. And the last book that I read in the month of August, nope, that's totally a lie, that I finished in the month of August. I've actually been working on this book for like a really, really long time, guys, like quite a number of months. And that's The Idylls of the King by Alfred Lord Tennyson. And this is a series of Arthurian retellings done in verse. And I really like King Arthur stories and I enjoy poetry, so I thought I would give this a try, and I've been working at it little by little for a number of months and finally got through it in August. And I did really enjoy it. I think my favorite stories out of the collection were Gareth and Lynette and Lancelot and Elaine. Overall, I think I gave this 4 stars. I would warn that, as you've probably already noticed, this is not a fast read. And I discovered part of the reason why when I finished this book. I actually read it on my Kindle and didn't discover until I had finished reading it that the paper version is like 400 pages long. So I was like, oh, I read 400 pages of blank verse, so I'm kind of proud of myself about that. But yeah, I really did enjoy it. If you haven't read much poetry, I would not recommend it as a starting point, but if you do enjoy poetry, especially from that era, and you haven't read these ones, they're definitely really good. So yeah, that was my reading month for August. I have actually already read a couple of books here in September, but I'll leave them for my next wrap-up, and I'll be seeing you guys again soon. If any of you guys have read any of these books or would like to read any of these books, leave me a comment down below. I would love to hear about that, and I'll be seeing you guys later. Bye!